Never interrupt your enemies when they are making mistakes. The New York Times just stepped on it in a big way. They just helped save Suppressors for America. I'm not sure they know what they did, but we're going to break it down for you when we come right back. Great news, folks. Great news. Hey, folks. I'm Mark Smith, host of the Four Box Diner, proud American gun owner, constitutional attorney, member of the United States Supreme Court Bar, and I'm proud to say the top voice of the Second Amendment in America. Thank you, 2025 Gundies Awards. Okay, folks, don't forget, Thursday, 2 p.m. New York time, I'll be in Washington, D.C., giving a major presentation to the Federalist Society National Lawyers Conference. This is a big deal. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of people that go to this event every year. There are hundreds of judges and hundreds of law clerks and thousands of lawyers and scholars and all sorts of things. This is a very big deal, folks. I'll be giving a super nerdy, I'm going to warn you now, a super nerdy, detailed discussion of some procedural issues involving facial challenges and some other things that are super complicated that some of the judges are getting wrong. I'm going to clear it up for them. I will maybe even give you a preview with a couple of videos, but it's super nerdy. I'm just warning you now. But they're very important topics I will be covering because some of the courts are making big time mistakes and they don't even know they're doing it. But I hopefully will help clarify that for American lawyers and American judges in just a couple days. All right, with that said, the New York Times has just given us an early Christmas present or Hanukkah present. What just happened was the New York Times did a big story clearly indicating where, in my view, the anti-gun movement intends to go. Specifically, they just did a big story, and I'll put a link to it down below, though it's probably behind a paywall. The story basically discusses the dangers, the physical dangers to human beings, specifically civilians, i.e. non-law enforcement, non-military, civilian gun owners who use guns in indoor ranges. The whole point of this article was based on some tests that the New York Times reporters and others presumably did, testing whether or not the use of small caliber weapons in indoor ranges created blasts that either an individual shot or over time could cause, let's say, concussions or brain damage or some other physical ailment to the people that are participating in these activities. Now, obviously, in my opinion, the overall theme here is to try to raise risks to ordinary people so that mothers, for example, will try to discourage their children from engaging in the shooting sports activities, among other things. That's clearly where this is going. And just to give you, and I'm going to get to the good news in just one moment, but before I go there, I just want to show you just how absurd, in my view, this article is, with just one simple observation. And remember, there are other fantastic gun people in the YouTube community that are really good on guns, on ballistics, terminal ballistics, all that stuff. I'm not the guy for that. I know some about it, but there's other better sources. But I do know that what I'm about to say is clearly absurd from my experience, and that is this. They were firing, a 50 caliber rifle indoors and trying to measure the effect on the body and the pounds per square inch of pressures and all these things by firing a 50 caliber rifle indoors. Now, I've fired 50 cals and I've fired 6.5 Creedmoors, and these are big rounds, as you all know. And the idea to shoot these things indoors at a civilian gun range, I'm surprised that you can even do that, because I'm shocked that ranges would allow that kind of caliber gun being fired, because it's a huge round, obviously. Nevertheless, they, needless to say, tested that round, and then when they listed all of the different rounds they tested on a pounds per square inch, as to the pounds per square inch of pressure they felt on the chest and the pounds per square inch they felt on the brain or the head, you're not going to believe this, but the 50 caliber was literally the biggest PSI, as opposed to all the revolvers and the AR-15s and the 357 mag and so on and so on. The 50 cal was the one that exceeded the 4.0 PSI, which is apparently the safety standard that no round at an indoor range should go above 4.0 pounds per square inch in terms of pressure on the body. And they talk about this. And the one thing that did go above that was the 50 cal. So they spend a bunch of time talking about this rifle's supersonic blast wave as it hits the shooter's head in less than the time it takes to blink, and so on and so on. So anyway, if you're shooting 50 calibers at indoor range, I'd be curious to know how that works out, because my experience is I didn't realize you generally can shoot a 50 cal rifle indoors, but maybe I'm not going to the right ranges. You'll have to let me know. Okay, so let me give you the great news here, and then we'll go just give you a few more minutes about what this article says, just so you're aware of it. The fantastic news here, and this is going to appear, this is my prediction. What I'm about to read to you is going to find its way into countless legal briefs in support of suppressors in Second Amendment cases, in national shooting sports related cases, in industry cases, probably on Congress when they're debating the removal of suppressors from the National Firearms Act, and so on and so on. This is the language where the New York Times, having done all this analysis, raising issues about the dangers to people engaging in multiple, shooting guns a lot at indoor ranges, and the dangers to their brains and the dangers to their body from this activity. At the very end of the article, buried at the bottom of the article, I'm sure you're shocked, the New York Times literally talks about the way to make this safer is by using suppressors. The anti-gun New York Times just gave the Second Amendment movement in America a fantastic gift, which will be used, in my view, all around this great country, including eventually before the United States Supreme Court. Here's what the New York Times had to say about the benefits of suppressors. Fortunately, there are simple ways to limit exposure. The New York Times found that shooting in an open outdoor setting, rather than in an enclosed booth, can cut blast levels by more than half. When shooting indoors, ensuring that the gun barrel extends beyond the booth can reduce exposure. Choosing smaller caliber weapons and less powerful ammunition can also help. Now listen carefully, folks. Here's the big one. Attaching a suppressor or blast regulator to the muzzle to direct the blast forward and away from the shooter can also make a big difference. In the New York Times testing, the blast from firing an AR-15 rifle indoors measured as high as 1.7 pounds per square inch PSI. Listen carefully. When a blast regulator was added, the measurement fell to less than 0.5 PSI, or if you're on Wall Street, that's 50 basis points, by the way, fell to less than 0.05 PSI. It goes on to say, suppressors and regulators are often used by law enforcement and the military, but they are pricey, and suppressors are tightly regulated in some states and illegal in others. Wow. Now that's true, by the way. But this is the thing, of course, it's wrong. They bury this critical information at the bottom of the article. Now, we all know that shooting big caliber firearms outdoors is generally better than shooting them indoors. We get that. I think we've always known that, especially if you're shooting 50 cal or 6.5 Creedmoor, which they did not test that, but you get the point. Okay? So they put that at the bottom. They point out literally that if you shoot outdoors, the blast levels are cut in more than half. That's a big deal, folks. That's really a big deal. Beyond that, of course, they talk about the importance of suppressors, that a AR-15 goes from a 1.7 pounds per square inch down to a 0.5 pounds per square inch. And by the way, as a side note, in the article, they say that a safe round is where if you pull the trigger and the blast, the PSI to your body and to your head, according to the Army and military, is a 4 pounds per square inch, a 4. So the only round that they tested, the only gun they tested with the ammunition they used that exceeded that 4.0 PSI level was the 50 cal indoors. That was the only one. Everything else, if you fired the round, it was somewhere between, looks like a 1.0 for a 45 ACP, 1911 pistol, all the way up to a 3.4, which is the 50 caliber AE Desert Eagle. And all the other guns fell between that 1.0 PSI and the 3.4. But the bottom line is this is fantastic news for us in the suppressor world, because if you're fighting about suppressors, you can use this over and over and over again moving forward. That even the New York Times recommends the use of suppressors, which is a no-brainer, pardon the pun. All right, folks, so I'm not going to belabor the point about this article beyond the great news here. There's other things that I'm sure you can break apart. Maybe I'll do it if you really want in a future video. But check out this article and make sure if you're litigating Second Amendment cases, if you're involved with the suppressor world, which I'm really not, by the way, but if you are involved in that world, you definitely want to take a look at this article and grab it for some gems, because I think this is going to be very helpful when you litigate these cases and when you talk to legislators and other people and just men on the street, if you will, about the importance of suppressors, that even the New York Times is indicating that the use of suppressors is very helpful to saving really your physical health. So there you have it. Okay, folks, hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure you follow me over there on X at @4boxes Diner. Don't forget to subscribe both to YouTube and to Rumble. And if you're going to be at the Federalist Society annual National Lawyers Convention, make sure you stop on by and say hello. I'll be there for a few days. Okay? I'll talk to you real soon here at, you guessed it, the 4 Boxes Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.